so you do remember, because it's useful for us. It introduces a new grammatical form, which I want to teach you. Paolo said, when she arrived, the place had burnt down. Now, can you imagine Sarah goes to her pub and it's burnt? So he says, when she arrived, the place had burnt down. Now, this had burnt down is what I want to teach you. It's the past perfect. Let me give you another example, because we use it when you have two actions. One action happens after the other. Let me show you. For example, I write a message and then I send it. Okay? Now, these are two actions. First, you write it and then you send it. So I could begin the phrase, put the two actions together and they become consecutive. And we begin the phrase with after. So I could say, after I had written, this is the first action, further in the past. After I had written the message, dung, I sent it. The second phrase is in the simple past. So this is what I'd like to look at with you on the screen now, the past perfect, for two actions which happen at different times in the past. Now, if you look at the examples, the first one is, after I had checked my change, I left the shop. All right, so first I check my change. Have I got enough change? Is it correct? And then I leave the shop. You put them together and the first action goes further back in the past. Now, you can see how it's formed. We have the auxiliary have in the past, not in the present. And that takes everything further back. So, after I had checked is the past participle, my change, I left, simple past, the shop. Okay? So then we get the idea that one action is further in the past. Another example, I read the contract, then I sign it. It becomes, when I had read the contract, I signed it. All right, so past perfect. This is important for you because we also use it in the third conditional, which we will be studying, okay? Another example, you get in your car, you fasten your seatbelt, you drive off, all right? So, after I had fastened, past participle, my seatbelt, I drove off. And one more example, when I had tried the shoes on, I bought them. So I try them on, I buy them. When I had tried the shoes on, I bought them. A few more, they'll help you, you'll get the hang of it. After I had checked my ticket, I went to the airport. So first I check my ticket, then I go to the airport. And the last one, I read the instructions. I have a new machine, so I read the instructions and then I turn it on. So after I had read the instructions, I turned the machine on. All right, so that is a new tense. It's called the past perfect, and it's formed by putting the auxiliary have in the past tense, followed by the past participle. And this is actually very similar in many other languages. So I don't think it's going to cause any particular problems for you. All right? And we'll look at that again in the conditional form, conditional number 3. Great. So have fun and take care. Bye.
Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of Let's Talk. In the studio with me, as always, are our commentators, Marie and Tom.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'd like to start our discussion this evening with some personal questions. How old are you? Are you nearing retirement? Are you already retired? Perhaps you have your working life ahead of you. Anyway, one thing is for sure. The meaning of the word retirement is going to change in the future. Let's talk about this with Tom and Marie.
You're right, Eric. The traditional
division of life into three cycles, education, employment, and retirement, must change. People in developed countries are living longer. By 2025, in developed countries, the share of the population over 60 will have reached 26%.
All these pensioners will certainly wield a lot of power.
They will, Eric. But you know, experts are beginning to talk about the concept of active aging. Just think that by 2050, the average lifespan in developed countries will be in the mid-80s. And this increasing longevity is already starting to have a negative impact on public finances, economic growth, and general living standards.
The problem is that there is increasing pressure on social security systems and public funds for retirement and healthcare expenses. Economists are increasingly questioning the sustainability of the European social model with its high welfare standards.
So, how can we solve this problem?
Well, governments really must encourage older people to continue working. There should be...
Just a minute, Mary. Sorry to interrupt, but are you really saying that I will have to work until I'm 95?
Well, not until 95, perhaps. But as I was saying, there should be programs for lifelong learning to help people learn up-to-date job skills as they get older. People about to retire should plan ahead and find some way of working, maybe a part-time job.
Well, some American companies already have phased retirement programs.
How do they work?
Well, retired employees go to the company website where they can find project work for the company. This may last 2 days or 2 months, and the retired workers can manage their own time and work when and where they want. If they need some training to do the job, they can go to the company website and take a short course using the internet to learn what they have to do.
In this way, retired people have more money and the companies can use the skills of their retired workers.
Yes, more money, but less free time. I don't think I like the idea of having to work in my retirement. And you, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about this? Well, thank you to our commentators, Tom and Marie, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And goodbye to you, and see you again next week for another edition of Let's Talk. Well, today's discussion was about how retirement will change. Retirement is when people stop working. The retirement age in European countries is around 60. We say a person retires. To retire means to stop working. And a person who is retired is a person who has stopped working. They are called pensioners. A pensioner is a retired person who receives weekly or monthly payments from the state. The money a pensioner receives is called a pension. So why and how will things change in the future? The average lifespan is increasing. A lifespan is the length of a life. So people are living longer. We call this longevity. This increasing longevity is having a negative impact on public finances and living standards. Public finances are the money a government has to spend on its services. And living standards are what we call the general level of life in economic terms. There is more pressure on social security systems in Europe. A social security system of a country is the system of a country has to support the members of its society. For example, sick, unemployed, or retired people. Economists, these are economic experts, question the sustainability of the European social model. That is, the social security systems of European countries. The sustainability means the ability to continue doing something. Because welfare standards in Europe are high, welfare is the economic assistance a government provides for people in need. So, people need to plan ahead. To plan ahead is a phrasal verb. That means to make plans about something that will happen in the future. Well, that's all for me. Take care, and I'll see you next week for another edition of Let's Talk. Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Sports Special. With me in the studio is John Forbes, our sports expert.
Hello, Eric, and good afternoon to all our sports fans.
Well, John, which sports are you going to talk about today?
I'd like to talk about sumo.
Interesting. I must say I know something about the martial arts, karate and judo, but sumo? I know almost nothing. Those enormous guys, their unusual hairstyles, their colorful and rather unusual clothes. So, please tell us more.
Well, Eric, you know sumo is a martial art too, and it's Japan's traditional national sport. In fact, it's one of the world's oldest sports. It was first mentioned in a Japanese book more than 1,000 years ago, but experts believe it might be much older.
Really? More than 1,000 years old?
Yes, and you know there are also ancient wall paintings showing the sport. Archaeologists think prehistoric man may have done sumo as a form of prayer to the gods for a good harvest.
I think most people in the West watch these enormous wrestlers without appreciating these ancient traditions.
That's right, Eric. Sumo isn't just a sport. It's more a way of life, and it's played an important role in Japan's cultural and religious history. In Japan, successful sumo wrestlers are looked up to as role models and heroes by many people.
How does a sumo match work?
Two men meet in a ring that is about 4.5 meters across. The aim of the game is to force your opponent out of the ring or make a part of his body, apart from the soles of his feet, touch the floor. A bout can last just a few seconds or as long as 3 minutes. Sumo wrestlers are very big, but they can move very quickly.
Do you think I could be a sumo wrestler?
Well, if you put on 100 kilos, maybe yes. Sumo wrestlers start their training when they're young boys. If they show promise, they go to live in a traditional Japanese house called a sumo stable. The young boys train a lot and look after the older wrestlers. They prepare their food and clean their rooms for them. Everyone in the sumo stable eats a lot. They eat lots of noodles, rice, fish and chicken. The traditional dish is called chankanobi, and it's made with fish, meat and vegetables. The wrestlers eat this with lots of rice and they drink lots of beer too. Then they go to sleep.
So, that's how they put on so much weight.
Yes, the secret is to eat a lot and then sleep. This helps the wrestlers put on weight.
And the wrestlers' hairstyles, where do they come from?
A good question, Eric. There are lots of different ranks for sumo wrestlers. The best wrestlers are in the top rank. The style of a wrestler's hair depends on his rank. All the hairstyles come from samurai traditions. Samurai were traditional soldiers in Japan.
Interesting. I guess it's difficult for a sumo wrestler to find a girlfriend?
Actually, it's not that difficult, Eric. Successful wrestlers usually go out with beautiful models or pop singers.
Where can you see tournaments in Japan?
There are 6 grand sumo tournaments called basho every year. They take place during odd-numbered months like March or July. The basho take place in Tokyo and Osaka, Nagoya and Fukuoka.
Thanks, John, for a fascinating explanation of these rather mystifying sport. We found out a lot about sumo. Thanks, John. Goodbye. And goodbye to all our sports fans. See you next week for another edition of Sports Special. So, today we found out about a martial art called sumo. A martial art is an art of self-defense without using weapons, just your body. To find out about something means to learn new information. We found out that in Japan, sumo is more than just a sport, it's a way of life. People look up to sumo wrestlers. They are heroes. To look up to someone means to respect and admire them. A sumo wrestler is a man who practices sumo. Sumo wrestlers are very fat, and they have particular hairstyles. We found out that their hairstyle depends on their rank. Notice how we say depends on something. A rank is a position on a scale. The best wrestlers are in the top rank. And I was surprised to find out that sumo wrestlers go out with beautiful girls. To go out with someone means to have a romantic relationship with someone. What about you, ladies? Would you go out with a sumo wrestler? And you guys, would you put on 100 kilos to become a sumo wrestler? We say put on weight. This means become fatter. Actually, to put on so much weight, sumo wrestlers start training very young. If a boy shows promise, this means he shows ability at the sport. And what is the aim of the game? The aim is the objective. In football, the aim is to score a goal. In sumo, the aim is to force the opponent out of the ring. The opponent is the other person playing. The ring is the square platform where wrestlers and boxers fight. A wrestling or boxing match is called a bout. Sumo tournaments take place in odd number months. An odd number is a number that isn't divisible by 2. For example, 1, 3, 5, 7. 2, 4, 6, 8 are even numbers. An even number can be divided by 2. I have to leave you now, but see you here next week for another edition of Sports Special.